The story opens with a general shot high across the tree line of a rich, green rainforest. Intercut is a succession of pictures of Jake Contaminate, Sam Worthington, an injured conflict veteran and previous Marine. He awakens in a monster spaceship en route to Pandora, a thickly forested Earth-like moon circling Polyphemus, a Goliath blue planet like Jupiter. He is one of countless travelers, all awakening after just about 6 years of cryosleep on the way to Pandora. Floating out of his dozing case in 0G, he's tended by the boat's staff. He opens his storage, which is stamped Contaminate T. Jake lets us know that he has a departed twin sibling, Tom, a researcher, who was to be essential for an undeniable level program regulated by corporate and military tacticians to concentrate on the climate and occupants of Pandora. Since Jake and his sibling are a precise hereditary match, he was given an exceptional open door, assume control over his sibling's agreement with a corporate military element and travel with as little luggage as possible years away to a station on the recently seen world, Pandora. Recognizing the thoughts of being free and having a new beginning, Jake consents to the arrangement as his sibling's body is incinerated. Presently being shipped from the spaceship to Pandora through a van, Jake is one of many troopers and regular citizen staff going to land on Pandora, a few 4.3 light a long time from Earth. We get perspectives on the base and its development and gigantic mining machines uncovering the dirt in a huge quarry as Jake considers his new job. The travelers are undeniably educated to wear a full-face breathing veil since the climate of the planet won't uphold human existence. 20 seconds of openness to the harmful environment of the planet causes obviousness, with death happening around 4 minutes after the fact. While different travelers land and make their most memorable strides onto the base, called Damnation's Entryway, which is encircled by a gigantic border wall, Jake follows them in his wheelchair, procuring the moniker, Dinners on Wheels, from a couple of haughty Marines. He recognizes through voiceover that he lost the utilization of his legs during one of his deployments on the planet, and keeping in mind that a spinal injury like his can be fixed, it takes cash, which is difficult to get in the current economy. Jake goes promptly to a tactical instructions where Colonel Miles Quaritch, Stephen Lang, is tending to the gathered troopers and a couple of regular citizens who have gone along. He reminds them they're not in Kansas anymore, and he educates them concerning Pandora's native populace, the Nasics. Quaritch, brandishing a heavy of scars in favor of his head, says they are difficult to kill, and essentially everything out there will attempt to kill you. Also, while he must keep his kin alive, he says he won't prevail in this undertaking, not with every one of you. Assuming they wish to make do, he proceeds, they should follow Pandora rules. Jake goes to a science lab where he meets scientist Norm Spellman, Joel David Moore, and Dr. Max Patel, Dilip Rao, 2 individuals from the symbol program. As Jake gets his most memorable gander at his own symbol, we find out about the actual program. People can't inhale Pandora's air, yet the symbol program empowers a human to connect with their own symbol, a hereditarily reared human Nasics mixture, and capability as though they were a Nasics local. In his symbol body, Jake will actually want to walk in the future and inhale the air. The symbols seem to be their human drivers. At the point when Norm tells Jake his symbol seems as though him, Jake significantly says it seems to be his dead sibling. Jake and Norm enter the science division pretty much the time Dr. Effortlessness Augustine, Sigourney Weaver, the program's science lead, stirs in an extraordinarily planned unit that connects her to her symbol and flips open the top. Norm tells Jake he hears she enjoys, establishes better compared to individuals. She emerges from her case and chats in Nasics with Norm. Happy with Norm's order of the language, she goes to Jake. She lets him know she really wants his sibling Tom, the PhD who prepared 3 years for the Pandora mission, yet she needn't bother with Jake since Jake has no lab experience and has never been connected to a symbol. Jake attempts to infer that he's a speedy student, however the crotchety Effortlessness isn't dazzled. Beauty stomps off to the base's control space to defy Parker Selfridge, Giovanni Ribisi, base commandant and delegate for the Assets Advancement Organization, RDA, an enterprise that directs all military and other faculty on the state. He tells her Jake will act as a security escort in her group while they're in the world's surface. Elegance tells Parker she wants a scientist, not a marine dropout. She questions Jake will be of any utilization to her natural examination. Parker answers, saying he deviates, saying they got lucky with Jake. Since he's an ideal hereditary counterpart for the symbol expected for his twin sibling, they can involve his tactical abilities in a symbol body toward the general goal of the activity, mining the mineral unobtainium, a strong wellspring of energy that sells for a large number a kilo, and can take modest power back to a withering earth. Parker advises effortlessness. One method for achieving this goal is to win the hearts and brains of the locals, to acquire their participation. Elegance contends that large numbers of the Na-6 have been killed by the military under the sponsorship of Selfridge's activity. Back in the lab next morning, Jake and Norm are connected to their symbols interestingly. Jake, in his symbol, awakens in an alternate room with different symbols and staff. Inside a couple of seconds, Jake is making his overseers apprehensive in light of the fact that, excited with his capacity to move his legs once more, he is moving excessively fast and attempting to walk, whenever he first has had the option to do as such since turning into a paraplegic. The human lab laborers can't stop him. A Na-6 is north of 10 feet tall, at times more like 12 feet, and far more grounded than people. At the point when his long tail pushes over instruments, a staff part advises him to pause and rests once more. Jake overlooks him and blasts out of the room and into the sunlight. He winds up in an entertainment region where different symbols are playing sports and staff, in their defensive stuff, are performing different obligations. Jake meets Beauty's symbol, who, preferable tempered over human elegance, goes with Jake to the encampment where he is at last urged to rest. Before he rests to rest, Jake investigates his brain line, a long member that seems to be a twist of hair. Toward the finish of his line is a bunch of stowed-away ringlets. At the point when the symbol rests, the connection is broken and Jake himself stirs. Jake later meets Trudy Chacon, Michelle Rodriguez, a resigned Marine pilot with whom he'll endure half a month becoming accustomed to his symbol and investigating Pandora. Jake will act as the entryway heavy weapons specialist on her team. Jake meets with Colonel Quaritch, who is lifting loads. The colonel tells Jake he's looked into his administration record and was dazzled with what he achieved on a portion of his visits, remembering one for Venezuela. The colonel cautions Jake about the perils looking for him on Pandora. He likewise expresses his conviction that the symbol program is a joke, yet that it offers a chance for a one-of-a-kind surveillance mission, on the off chance that Jake can figure it out and let the colonel know what he needs to be familiar with the locals, how to convince them to create some distance from the unobtainium metal stores and how to hit them hard on the off chance that they won't. The colonel will make sure that Jake gets the medical procedure he really wants to recapture. Utilization of his legs. The colonel moves into an AMP suit, a bipedal exoskeleton utilized for missions on Pandora, and moves off. Relinked with his symbol, Jake flies over Pandora's surface in Trudy's gunship, alongside Effortlessness, Norm, and others. The group lands in a woodland, where Effortlessness and Norm start to take tests of the vegetation and make estimations. Jake is diverted by his environmental elements and meanders into a field of helicorydian blossoms, which are very tall and psychologist at Jake's touch. Inconvenience shows up when a titanothere, a vigorously defensively covered, hammerhead animal, faces Jake. Elegance orders him to hold fast and not shoot, or, in all likelihood the creature will lash out and charge. In any case, his protective layer is excessively thick for weapons to have any impact. Jake effectively holds his ground, however, simply because another monster, a jaguar-like Thanator, has moved toward him from behind and has caused the titanotheres to withdraw and encompass their young. The Thanator then goes to Jake. Elegance advises him to run, and he's sought after by the Thanator in a pursuit that isolates Jake from his group. He loses his weapon and is brought down by the creature, yet liberates himself by delivering his knapsack. Eventually, the pursuit prompts a cascade, where Jake leaps to somewhere safe and secure, leaving the Venator thundering above him. Jake's group looks for him, however Trudy says they'll need to get back to base since night operations are not permitted. Elegance says he won't last the evening. It's presently night and we see Jake honing a long stick into a lance. Jake is being watched from a higher place, this time by a Na-6. The Na-6 points a bolt at Jake and is going to shoot, however rules against it when little, ethereal, glowing animals land on her bow. Later we learn they are extremely unadulterated spirits, otherwise called the Seeds of Iowa, the novice all-strong god. The bowman withdraws. Jake is followed by a pack of viper wolves. He plunges the finish of his lance into an ignitable pitch-like fluid. He lights the end and uses it as a light against the viper wolves, who surround him, teeth uncovered, jaws grinding. The creatures assault Jake, he retaliates, kills some, and is brought somewhere around others. The bowman who was noticing Jake joins the fight on his side. She kills some viper wolves and makes the rest escape. She gently finally gives some closure some whining injured creatures and expresses petitions over them. Jake endeavors to say thanks to her for assisting him with fending off the assailants. She meets his thanks with disdain, lets him know this is his shortcoming, that they didn't have to bite the dust, and that he ought to return to where he came from. Jake inquires as to whether she feels as such, why she helped him. You have areas of strength for a. No trepidation, she makes sense of. Be that as it may, idiotic. Jake endeavors to follow his hero up into a tree, requests her assistance, and says he needs to learn. He's repelled and told to return, that sky individuals can't be educated. All of a sudden, the Seeds of Iowa return and begin to arrive on the apprehensive Jake. He asks what they are. Extremely unadulterated spirits, she answers, and Jake is covered by them, establishing a connection with his friend. At the point when the seeds float off, she yields and advises him to accompany her. As Jake attempts to stay aware of his hero, Neytiri, Zoe Saldana, he is felled by a billow tossed by a watch of Omatakean fighters. Their chief is Tsute, Laz Alonso, next in line to the privileged position and the man Neytiri is supposed to wed. Neytiri prevents them from hurting Jake by telling them there has been a sign from Iowa. Tsute tells his men to bring him along to Tashik, father, estimated spelling, and Iowa, mother. Jake is introduced to Neytiri's folks, Itukin, West Studi, and Emoat, CCH Pounder, who are the ruler and sovereign of the clan, individually. Jake lets the older folks know that he is a fighter, a dreamwalker, and his aim is to gain from them. Emoat pricks Jake's chest and tastes his blood, proclaiming it is the desire of Iowa for him to live with the Omaticea, and for Neytiri, but hesitantly, to be his educator in their ways and customs. After a custom social occasion, Jake is brought to his bed, a leaf high up in the home tree, that encompasses him like a casing. As he nods off, human Jake is restored. At morning chow, every one of the researchers, including Elegance, are centered around all that Jake needs to say. Norm appears to be exceptionally disheartened and dismal. He was Elegance's unique decision to bond with the Omaticea. Indeed, even the military and corporate reps have warmed to Jake. Hometree sits on a monstrous store of unobtainium, so Jake seems, by all accounts, to be their absolute best at persuading the Omaticea to move, or encouraging the colonel on the most proficient method to compel them to do as such. He's educated that he has 3 months to accomplish his objective before the tractors show up. The following scenes spin around Symbol Jake's preparation with Neytiri and Human Jake's reports on his encounters through the video log he directs after each day's action. He bonds with his dire horse, a significant creature to the Na-6. Jake should figure out how to mount the creature and interface his brain line to its receiving wire. Human Jake keeps on investigating the home tree's framework and other Na-6 subtleties. Jake struggles with figuring out how to control his dire horse and is frequently alluded to as Sksong, Scown, by Neytiri and Tsute, which he lets us know signifies numbskull. Jake reports back to the Colonel and Selfridge about the Omatikea's home, the monster home tree. Under it is an enormous store of unobtainium. Jake enlightens them concerning the design of the 1,000-foot-tall tree. Quaritch sees an amazing chance to obliterate the tree, yet Jake demands he be permitted to haggle with the Nausicaa and persuade them to leave. Detecting that Jake is being controlled by Quaritch, Selfridge and the remainder of the tactical segment of the mining activity, Elegance chooses to take her activity out of evade. She moves them into the Thank Heaven Mountains, a distant locale of gigantic, drifting islands that are consecrated to the Nausicaa and are likewise rich in unobtainium. Beauty needs her turf away from the RDA authorities and military sorts at the base. In his next video log, Jake examines his language examples and says his experience with the Nausicaa is like field stripping a weapon. Enough redundancy and you can't resist the urge to learn it. This is intercut with scenes of his kept preparation with Neytiri, who shows him the Nausicaa Woodland Association. She lets Jake know that all energy is acquired and one day we need to give it back. Jake appears to grasp this, and as he says a request for a creature he chased and recently killed, Neytiri says that he is prepared for a significant soul-changing experience, to bond with and ride a Declan, a flying mountain banshee. To arrive at the banshee's settling grounds, Jake should go with Neytiri, Tsute, and 2 other Nausicaa students to the most noteworthy district of the Thank Heaven Mountains. A few factors, the level, the savagery of the untamed banshees, make this a hazardous illustration, yet Jake's absence of dread and effective security with his banshee gain him the hesitant appreciation of the Nausicaa fighters present, even Tsute. He makes the bond with the ringlets in his line, and as he rides the flying creature he comments that he's a sorry horseman but rather he was destined to do this. Jake, Neytiri, and the others ride together to the Tree of Spirits, the most sacrosanct spot to the Nausicaa. While flying on a hunting foray, Jake and Neytiri are out of nowhere sought after and went after by an animal referred to the Nausicaa as Toruk, a monster and brilliantly shaded flying mountain banshee with dangerous expectations toward all that flies. Neytiri says its name signifies last shadow. The Toruk's shadow, once seen, is typically the last shadow one at any point will see, as its assault is quite often lethal. Back at Home Tree, Neytiri shows Jake the skeleton of a forerunner of the present Toruk. She lets him know the last individual to ride a Toruk was hers granddad, who utilized the creature to join the 5 Nausicaa clans in a period of extraordinary distress. Such an individual would procure the title Toruk Mado, Rider of the Last Shadow. At the point when Jake returns to his human structure, it's unmistakable he's been changed by this most recent experience, for he expresses, out there is this present reality, in here is the fantasy. The Colonel approaches him to let him know his main goal is achieved and he's to get back to Earth that day. Furthermore, great to his promise, the Colonel has set up for Jake to seek the treatment he wants to recover utilization of his legs. Jake wishes to defer his takeoff since he says he's right at the place where he's to be started into the clan and acknowledged as one of them, and afterward would have the status to haggle with the Nausicaa to migrate. The Colonel assents. Jake goes to a Nausicaa function, where he learns the Nausicaa accept that each individual can be conceived 2 times. Neytiri drives Jake to a position of petition, the Tree of Voices, where they utilize their lines to bond with the tree. Neytiri tells Jake he can make a bow from the tree, what's more, that he can pick a lady. Jake lets Neytiri know that he has previously picked her, and she says that she has picked him. They rest together under the tree and Jake awakens back in the lab. In the first part of the day, Neytiri stirs to falling trees, then, at that point, the presence of tractors. Officers are progressing as the woods falls around Neytiri, who is hauling and conveying Jake to somewhere safe and secure. At their remote spot, Jake is preparing to interface with his symbol, and when he at long last resuscitates, Jake moves onto one of the tractors and attempts to stop it, ultimately crushing its camera framework and drawing some gunfire. Other Nausicaa champions show up, while the Colonel, auditing films back at the base, perceives Jake in his symbol structure as the individual who attempted to stop their central goal. The tractors proceed with their activity, clearing out the hallowed ground. At Home Tree, the Na-6 need war. Beauty and Jake contend against it. There's an extraordinary discussion. Tsute attempts to kill Jake, desirous at having discovered that Jake and Neytiri are mated for life when he and Neytiri were pledged. Jake pronounces he is a Na-6 and merits the option to talk. Unexpectedly, both effortlessness and Jake's symbols fall oblivious as the connections among them and their human structures are suddenly broken by the incensed colonel, who captures Jake for attempting to stop the tractors. Elegance and Jake go head-to-head with RDA and military metal. Elegance uncovers that Pandora's trees structure an organization that has more brain associations than exist in the human mind and that the Na-6 can take advantage of that organization. Subsequently, the Omaticaya won't ever leave Home Tree. Parker and the Colonel talk about choices. He will send off an assault on Home Tree and us gas bombs to drive out the Na-6. Jake presses to be permitted to get back to the Omaticaya to attempt to persuade them to leave, and he's conceded 1 hour to accomplish that goal. Jake and Beauty are not invited back. Neytiri rejects Jake. Both Jake and Effortlessness are bound and abandoned by the Omaticaya, who are planning to battle against the people, who have shown up in an enormous armada of flying boats. The human military have gotten the mixture of Na-6 into the region, from 200 or 300 to 2,000 soon. Going on like this, the colonel says as he tends to his soldiers, the Na-6 will before long add up to 20,000, so, all in all their border will be overwhelmed. Instead of allowed that to occur, he proceeds, they should organize a precautionary assault while they actually can. They will probably transform a space transport into the transporter of an enormous bomb. Their objective is the Tree of Spirits, and the assault is made arrangements for 0600 the following day. That's what they trust. Assuming they annihilate the Tree of Spirits, the Na-6 will disappear and never approach this put from now on. Jake is in the middle of energizing the Omaticaya. At the Tree of Spirits, he utilizes his line to bond with the tree and requests that Iwa investigate Effortlessness recollections, focusing on that humanity killed their mom, Earth, the substance that safeguards the equilibrium of life. Neytiri shows up and tells Jake that Iwa doesn't favor one side. Quaritch masses his armada, for the most part as security for the Valkyrie transport. The bombship and the armada advance toward the Tree of Spirits. The unified Na-6 force starts to show up from the sky and on the ground. Jake on his Toruk, Tsute, and different fighters participate fighting with the tactical airplane, fundamentally Scorpion attack ships. Setbacks mount on the two sides. The gunships have unequaled capability, yet are no counterpart for the Declans, who grasp them and crush them against one another. Jake, riding the Toruk, is sought after and shot at by Colonel Quaritch's Dragonfly transport. Trudy shows up and starts shooting at the Colonel's Order transport. Neytiri's Banshee is destroyed and killed. Norm's symbol is mortally injured and he hops back to his human structure. Tsute takes on the bombship and is killed in the endeavor. Trudy bites the dust when her boat is obliterated in a hail of gunfire from Quaritch's Dragonfly. Neytiri watches this activity from the beginning. Jake endeavors to contact Tsute and is ineffective, just like his endeavor to arrive at Trudy. In the meantime, the bombship surrounds the Tree of Spirits. Jake tells Neytiri by means of communicator to separate from the battle. Unexpectedly, through what's left of the encompassing woodland, a legion of Titanotheres, Pandora's intensely defensively covered dinosaur-like creatures, shows up and draws in the earth powers. They immediately devastate two infantry and officers in AMP suits. Thrilled that Iwa has heard Jake's supplication for help, Neytiri rejoins the battle with numerous other of Pandora's species behind her. When a Thanator shows up neighboring, it bows to her meekly. Jake and his Toruk take to the sky to face the bombship as the Tactical's ground powers retreat in chaos. Drawing closer from a higher place, Jake projectiles the bombship. It crashes on fire and blasts well away from the Tree of Spirits. Jake likewise tosses explosives into weak pieces of the Order transport. It starts to torch and go. Colonel Quaritch gets into an amp suit and hops liberated from the Order transport before it breaks down in a bundle of blazes. He ends up at the impermanent camp set up by effortlessness. In the camp, Jake is inside his symbol case. Quaritch, set on killing Jake, is presently gone after by a Vanator that Neytiri had fortified with and ridden to the site. With the guide of his amp suit, the Colonel kills the Vanator and Neytiri is caught under it. Before the Colonel gets an opportunity to kill Neytiri, Jake shows up in his symbol. The two take part in battle, the Colonel in his amp suit and Jake as his symbol, outfitted exclusively with a piece of line. Jake crushes the suit's plastic shade, the Colonel pops it off, wears a breathing veil, and, before he moves off toward the designs that house the cases, asks Jake how it feels to have sold out his race. "You believe you're one of them?" Time to awaken, he insults, as he crushes into the versatile lab, searching for Jake's case, aim on annihilating it and human Jake. The fight resumes. Jake is gotten by an arm of the amp suit and swings from his line before the Colonel. In the interim, Neytiri has nearly liberated herself. The Colonel presently draws Jake nearer to him and goes after his blade, aiming to complete Jake by cutting his throat. Out of nowhere, Neytiri shoots a bolt at the Colonel, skewering him through the focal point of his chest. The Colonel, staggering, can't proceed with his assault on Jake. Neytiri's subsequent bolt holds up right close to the first. It acquires the Colonel the amp suit to the ground. Nonetheless, much harm has been finished to the lab, which is spilling in the planet's noxious environment. Human Jake is conscious yet experiencing issues both breathing and attempting to get a veil on. Neytiri shows up and helps Jake on with his cover. According to supporting human Jake, I see you. It's whenever they first have seen each other eye to eye. Back at Damnation's entryway, the greater part of the excess people are being walked into a bus to be sent back to Earth. In any case, a limited handful Earth individuals, like Norm and Dr. Patel, are welcome to remain on Pandora. Jake closes down in his last video log, where we discover that he has decided to move his awareness to his symbol for good. In a service like Elegance's, Jake goes through the eye of Iwa, what's more, awakens in his symbol with Neytiri looking after him.